So I hope everyone today in today's session were present yesterday as well. Priyanka, you were there yesterday?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And who else is there? Okay, Rahela was there. Preeti, you were there yesterday? Preeti Pallavi was there. Preeti, you were there yesterday's lecture for yesterday's lecture?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Okay, good then. So yesterday we saw some part of uh, acid-base titrations and titration curves. Okay, and see these all part we had completed yesterday. Titration curve, neutralization curves, titration, four types of titration of acid and bases in aqueous medium. Then we saw non-aqueous titrations. What is non-aqueous titration? Why we require non-aqueous titration? Solvents used in non-aqueous titration. Okay, titrants used in non-aqueous titration. Today we will start with complexometric titrations. Okay, so here you can see for complexometric titrations. Complexometric titration, sometime chilatometry, it is also known as chilatometry, okay, is a form of volumetric analysis in which the formation of colored complex is used to indicate the end point of titration. So what is the basic fundamental used here? That is formation of a colored complex, and this colored complex after formation we can use this as an indicator to indicate the end point of the titration. Complexometric or chilatometric titrations are particularly useful for the determination of a mixture of different metal ions in solution. Okay, is this clear? It is particularly used for detection of or determination of mixture of different metal ions in a solution. Okay, so if you need to determine different mixture of metal ions which are present in your solution, you would be doing the complexometric titration. An indicator capable of producing an unambiguous color change is usually used to detect the end point of the titration. So an indicator which will give a color change, okay, that will help us to find out the end point of the titration, or a colored complex can be formed which can help us to find the end point of the titration, and these are used to find mixture of different metal ions in a solution. Okay, principle of complexometric titration. In theory, any complexation reaction can be used as a volumetric technique provided that the reaction reaches equilibrium rapidly after each portion of titrant is added. Okay, what they have told, see, in any complexation reaction, okay, complexation reaction we are dealing can be used as a volumetric technique. Okay, any complexation reaction we can use as a volumetric technique until and unless or provided that the reaction reaches equilibrium rapidly after each portion of titrant is added. Interfering situations do not arise. For instance, the stepwise formation of several different complexes of the metal ion with the titrant, resulting in presence of more than one complex in solution during the titration process. So there should not be any interfering complexes or intermediate stages into the reaction. Okay, it should proceed with the complex formation, which only one type of complex formation, no multiple type of complex should be there in that reaction. A complexometric indicator capable of locating equivalence point with fair accuracy is available. So there should be an complexometric indicator available, okay, which can locate the equivalence point fairly and with accuracy. In practice, the use of EDTA as a titrant is well established. So EDTA is mostly used, okay, as a complexing agent. So what is EDTA? Have you heard EDTA before? Hello.
Ethylene diamine tetraestic acid.
Correct. EDTA is complexing agent. The full form of EDTA is ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid. Now you can see here we have calcium or magnesium ions. Okay, we have an indicator, Eocom black tea or modern black tea indicator. Okay, And here we have ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid, that is EDTA. Okay, ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid. See tetra, 1, 2, 3, 4, tetraacetic acid, ethylene diamine, ethylene CH2CH2 diamine tetraacetic acid. This is your structure of EDTA. This is the titrant here. These are the metal ions which we are going to detect, and this is the indicator that we are going to use. What is the color of the indicator? It is wine red color. Okay, normally the indicator is present in a wine red color. Now what we have did, we have mixed this indicator with our solution of metal ions, and drop by drop we have added ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid EDTA into this solution. Okay, so our EDTA is into the burette. Okay, and your conical flask has the metal ion solution, unknown metal ion solution. Okay, and indicator. So यहाँ पे है metal and indicator, और यहाँ पे है आपका EDTA. Okay, now what is going to and the color of this is wine red color. Okay, hence once we are adding the EDTA drop by drop, what it is happening, calcium and EDTA complex is forming, magnesium and EDTA complex is forming, free eochrome black tea indicator is present. Okay, and final color at the end point would be blue. So these complexes will form colorless. Okay, the color would be colorless, and this free indicator will have a blue color. Okay, so our solution will turn from wine red to blue. Okay, so this is how the titration would turn, and this is how the indicator would work here. I hope this is clear. Hello, is this
Yes,
clear?
sir.
Okay. Next, we are going to study complexing agents, because in complexometric titration, the important part is complexing agents. Okay, so first complexing agent that we are going to study is EDTA, which is most widely used complexing agent in complexometric titration. That is ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid. This is the structure of EDTA. Okay, it has four carbonyl carboxyl groups and two amine groups. Four carboxyl, 1, 2, 3, 4, and two amine groups. These two amine groups that can act as electron pair donors or Lewis bases. These are electron pair donors. These nitrogens are electron pair donors. So these are Lewis bases because they are donating pair of electron. The ability of EDTA to potentially donate its 6 lone pair of electrons for the formation of coordinate complex bond to metal cations makes EDTA a hexadentate ligand. Okay, EDTA has ability to potentially donate 6 lone pair of electron, which is very important. This 2 nitrogen will donate to 2 lone pair of electron, and this 4 acetic acid will donate to 2. So 6 pairs of electrons this EDTA has the ability to donate. Okay, so when it donate the electron, it forms a complex, okay, with formation of coordinate covalent bond with metal ions. Okay, and thus EDTA is known as hexadentate ligand. Hexa, why? Because 6 electrons, 6 pair of electron it donates, so it forms 6 new coordinate covalent bonds. Okay, so EDTA is a hexadentate ligand. This is very important. However, in practice, EDTA is usually only partially ionized and thus forms fewer than 6 coordinate covalent bonds with metal ions. But in practice, what happens? EDTA doesn't form all the 6 bonds with the metal ion. Okay, it partially gets ionized, and partially whatever the electrons are there, it donates and forms the covalent bond. So it doesn't form 6 covalent bond, but it has the ability to form 6 covalent bonds. So it is known as a hexadentate ligand. Disodium EDTA is commonly used to standardize aqueous solution of transition metal cation. Disodium EDTA, that is sodium salt of EDTA, is commonly used to standardize aqueous solutions of transition metal cation. So it is used as a primary standard. Disodium EDTA often written as Na2H2Y, only forms 4 coordinate covalent bonds to metal cation at pH values less than or equal to 12. At this pH, the amine group remain protonated and unable to donate electron to the formation of coordinate covalent bond. See what they have told. Disodium EDTA has the ability to form 4 coordinate covalent bond. Okay, so means it can donate 4 pair of electron. Only EDTA can donate 6 pairs of electron, but disodium EDTA can only donate 4 pair of electron. Why so? Because see what has happened now, these two sodium ions which are attached, okay, these are attached to these two nitrogen at this pH. Okay, so only these acetic acid groups have the ability to donate the electron, and these two nitrogen now cannot donate the electron. Okay. In this pH, the amine group remain protonated. These amine groups, your two nitrogen groups, will remain protonated and unable to donate electron to the formation of coordinate covalent bonds. Okay, so at this pH 12, they cannot, they remain protonated, so they cannot donate any lone pair of electron. So disodium EDTA has the ability to donate only 4 4 pair of electron, or to form only 4 coordinate covalent bonds. Next is DTPA. DTPA is diethylene tetramine pentaestic acid. Diethylene triamine, sorry. Okay. So this is diethylene, 2-ethylene you can see here. Triamine you can see 1, 2, 3. And pentaestic acid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the structure of your DTPA, or diethylene triamine pentacetic acid, ditripenta. Okay, pentatic acid or diethylene triamine pentacetic acid, DTPA, it is also known as pentatic acid, is an amino polycarboxylic acid. It is amino polycarboxylic, poly because it has more number of carboxylic acids. Okay, so polycarboxylic acid consisting of diethylene triamine backbone with 5 carboxymethyl groups. What it has? It has a backbone of diethylamine, diethyl triamine backbone, okay, and 5 carboxymethyl groups in it. The molecule can be viewed as an expanded version of EDTA and is used similarly. It is an expanded version of EDTA, we can say, and it is used similarly means as a complexing agent. It is white water soluble solid. The conjugate base of DTPA has a high affinity for metal cations. Thus, the pentanion DTPA 5- is potentially an octadentate ligand. Okay, assuming that each nitrogen center with each CO group counts as a center for coordination. How it is octadentate, you can see these 5 uh, CO groups 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 3 nitrogen. 3 plus 5 equals to 8. In EDTA there were 2 nitrogen and 4 CO groups. So it was hexadentate. Here it is 8, so it is octadentate ligand. Okay. Next is EGTA. EGTA is the third complexing agent that we are going to study. EGTA, ethylene glycol bis amino ethyl ether tetraestic acid. The name is a bit difficult, and this is the structure here. Okay, tetraestic acid 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, ethylene glycol bis amino ethyl ether. Okay, ethereal groups you can see here. 2 amino groups you can see here. Okay, amino ethyl ether. EGTA is an amino polycarboxylic acid, a chelating agent or complexing agent. Okay, compared to EDTA, it has a lower affinity for magnesium, making it more selective for calcium ions. So it doesn't coordinate more with magnesium; it coordinates more with calcium and forms a complex with calcium ions. It is useful in buffer solutions that resemble the environment in living cells, where calcium ions are usually at least 1004 less concentrated than magnesium. So this EGTA finds its application in buffer solution, okay, where we are preparing buffer solutions which resemble our living environment, okay. So there we find its application. Next is masking and demasking agents. Now this is also one of the important point, okay. Masking and demasking agents. What are these masking demasking agents and what is their role? I will tell you. Masking and demasking agents. From the name itself, you can understand that we are putting mask and we are removing the mask as we do at on our face. Okay, like we are wearing the mask and we are removing the mask. Similarly, these are the agents which mask and demask some of the complexes or functional groups. Okay, now we'll see them. First, we'll see the masking agents. Masking agents act either by precipitation or by formation of complexes more stable than the interfering ion EDTA complex. Okay. Masking agents, how they work? They work by formation of precipitation or by formation of complexes which are more stable than the interfering ion EDTA complex. Masking by precipitation. Many heavy metals, example cobalt, copper, your lead can be separated either in the form of insoluble sulfides using sodium sulfide or insoluble complexes using the thioacetamide. These are filtered, decomposed and titrated with disodium EDTA. Other common precipitating agents are sulfate for Pb and barium, lead and barium, oxalate for calcium and lead, fluoride for calcium, magnesium and lead, ferrocyanide for zinc and copper, 8-hydroxyquinoline for many heavy metals. Thioglycerol, that is CH2SH, CH2OH, CH2OH, is used to mask copper by precipitation in the assay of lotions containing copper and zinc. Now I hope you got what they want to say or what here we need to convey, that is about masking by precipitation. What we are doing, we are masking some of the metal ions by precipitating them, okay, so that once we mask them they don't interfere with our titration. For example, we have a mixture of copper and magnesium, but we just need to identify magnesium in that solution. We are not concerned with the copper. So what we'll do, first we'll mask the copper. Okay, how we'll mask the copper? By using these precipitating agents. Okay, like for example, for copper I have used ferrocyanide as a precipitating agent. So what it will do, it will precipitate all the copper present in that solution. Now only I have magnesium which is freely available. Now that magnesium I will treat with EDTA and estimate the percentage of magnesium ions in that solution. So this is how we are masking the metal ions to avoid their interference. Okay, interfering ion EDTA complexes. Is this clear? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Masking by complex formation. First we saw masking with the help of precipitation. Now we are seeing masking by complex formation. Masking agents form more stable complexes with the interfering metal ions. The most important aspect is that the masking agent must not form complexes with the metal ion under analysis. It is one of the important point we need to consider. Means what? Now for example, I have a mixture of copper and magnesium ions, okay, but I don't need to estimate copper in that solution. I only need to estimate the magnesium. But copper is interfering because it is a mixture and I don't need to separate them. Okay. Separation will take time and it would be time consuming, or it would be impossible to separate this mixture of magnesium and copper ions. But what is my aim? I need to only detect at how many percentage of magnesium ions are present, okay, in my solution, and I don't have any concern with the copper ions. So what I will do, I will use masking agent. I may mask it by using precipitating agents, or now here by with the help of complexing agents. For example, I am using a complexing agent which specifically prepares complexes with copper, okay. So what it will do, it will only form the complexes with copper, and I would be having only free magnesium, and this magnesium I will estimate with my volumetric analysis. So this complexing agent which I will be using for masking of copper should be very specific. It should not form complex with magnesium. If it forms complex with magnesium, then it will create error in my uh, whatever my result it would be. Okay, so these masking complexing agents should not form complexes with the metal ions under analysis. Okay, the different masking agents used are enlisted below. So these are the different masking agents. The first one is ammonium fluoride, which will mask aluminium and iron. Next is ascorbic acid. It is convenient reducing agent for iron, which is then masked by complexing as the very stable hexacyanoferrate 2 complex. Next is dimer caprol, okay, or 2,3 dimer caprotopropanol. This is the uh, you can see chemical structure. Cations of mercury, cadmium, zinc, arsenic, tin, lead, and bismuth react with dimer caprol in weakly acidic solution to form precipitate which are soluble in alkaline solution. Next is potassium cyanide is another masking agent. Okay, complex forming masking agent. Reacts with silver, copper, mercury, iron, zinc, cadmium, cobalt, and nickel ions to form complexes in alkaline solution which are more stable than the corresponding ADDA complex. Next is potassium iodide is used to mask the mercury ions, okay, and is specific for mercury. Potassium iodide is only specific for mercury. It is used in the assay of mercury to chloride. Sixth is triethanolamine, okay, forms a colorless complex with aluminium, a yellow colored complex with iron, okay, colorless complex with aluminium and yellow complex with iron. So triethanolamine, aluminium and iron, potassium iodide, only mercury, this is very important, okay, potassium cyanide, many metal ions, dimer caprol also many, ascorbic acid also, ascorbic acid specifically for iron, okay, and ammonium fluoride for aluminium and iron. Next is demasking. The use of masking and selective demasking agent permits the successive titration of many metals. Masked substance regains its ability to enter into a particular reaction. It is used to determine a series of metal ions in one solution. Using masking and demasking agents in complexometry in the analysis of three metals. See, what we can do now, for example, I have a mixture of copper and magnesium, and what I had did, I need to only determine magnesium, so I masked the copper. Now what I need to estimate, I need to estimate copper in that, in the same solution. What I will do, I have estimated the magnesium now. Now I will demask the copper and estimate the copper as well. Here is one example given. We have a mixture of three metal ions, that is copper, cadmium and calcium. Okay, copper, Cu, Ca, calcium and Cd, cadmium. And what we'll be doing, we'll be using masking, demasking to estimate all three of these. Direct titration with EDTA, it will give the amount of three metals. Okay, what we'll do, we will first direct titrate with EDTA. So what we will get, all three metals overall result. Okay, no masking, demasking is done here. Now what we'll do in another way, what we can do is copper and cadmium will mask with the help of cyanide. Now only we have calcium, okay, that can be determined. So copper and cadmium we masked with cyanide ion and they are now not available for analysis. Calcium is freely available, or calcium does not react with cyanide, okay, so no reaction, and this free calcium will complex with the DDA and we can analyze the percentage of calcium present in this mixture of three metal ions. Further, what we can do, we can add formaldehyde or chloral hydrate is added to demask the cadmium and titrate the solution to determine calcium and cadmium. So what we'll do, we'll demask cadmium now, okay, copper plus cyanide, this is freely available, and CD cyanide complex with your formaldehyde, there would be no reaction, then the titration can be done as calcium with EDTA and cadmium with EDTA. Okay, so now we have estimated 2. So we can determine the value of copper, calcium and cadmium separately. Ca is directly determined by masking Cu and Cd. So we can minus these values, and for Cu we can find with the help of this equation. So basically I will tell you, I have three metal ions A, B and C. Okay. First I will what do? I will determine all three and find out the value. What is the total value of all three? Now what I will do in another setup, I will mask two complexes, okay, and will evaluate one value of one metal ion. Okay, I will mask two ions, for example B and C, and I will determine only one ion, that is metal ion A. Now what I will do, from B and C I will unmask one metal ion. For example, I will unmask metal ion B, and again I will estimate A and B. Okay, so I have three values now: total A plus B plus C, only A and B plus C. And so after doing mathematical equations I can find the value of C. Okay, because A plus B plus C we have the value, so A plus B if we know, then we can find C, and only A also we know, so we can cross check our answers. Is this fine for everyone? Hello? Hello? Am I
Yes,
audible?
sir.
Okay. Now these complexometric titrations can be performed by various different methods like direct titration, back titration, replacement titration, and indirect titration. So these are all mentioned. These are various ways you can perform this complexometric titration. So first is direct titration. In direct titration, what we do, it is the simplest and the most convenient method used in chiletometry. In this method, the standard Chilon solution is added to the metal ion solution until the endpoint is detected. Example, calcium gluconate injection, calcium lactate tablets, and compound sodium lactate injection for the assay of calcium chloride. Okay. Limitations, this is a slow complexation reaction, interfere due to presence of other ions. So direct titration, what we'll do, direct we will put our analyte solution and titrate it with complexing agent, for example EDTA. Next is back titration. In back titration, as you may also have performed in your college, okay. In this method, excess of standard EDTA solution is added to metal solution which is to be analyzed, and the excess is back titrated with the standard solution of second metal ion. Example, determination of Mn. This metal cannot be directly titrated with EDTA because of precipitation of MnOH twice. An excess of known volume of EDTA is added to an acidic solution of Mn salt, and then ammonia buffer is used to adjust the pH to 10, and the excess EDTA remaining after chelation is back titrated with the standard zinc solution kept in the burette using eochrome black tree as indicator. This method is analogous to back titration method in acidimetry. Okay, so I will explain you what they are trying to convey here in the back titration. For example, what they are doing, we have a metal A. They are titrating this metal A with EDTA. Okay, now this EDTA required to titrate this metal A is 20 ml, but they are adding excess of EDTA, that is more 10 ml. Okay, more 10 ml they are adding, okay, to titrate this. Now in this solution we have A which is totally complexed with 20 ml of EDTA, and we have 10 ml of free EDTA. Now we are taking this whole solution and titrating it with another metal complex. Okay, like for example zinc. We are adding zinc solution into this solution. Now 10 ml of zinc will require, for example 10 ml of EDTA will require 10 gram of zinc to form the complex. So from this we will get to know that how much excess we have added, and that is, so cross checking is done in this back titration. I hope this is clear. Hello.
Yes, sir.
The next is replacement titration. In this method, the metal which is to be analyzed displaces quantitatively the metal from the complex. When direct or back titration do not give sharp endpoint, the metal can be determined by the displacement of an equivalent amount of magnesium or zinc from a less stable EDTA complex. So what we have done, manganese and magnesium EDTA we have a complex. So what we have done just a replacement reaction here. Manganese replaces magnesium from magnesium EDTA complex. The free magnesium metal is then directly titrated with the standard EDTA solution. In this method, excess quantity of magnesium EDTA chelate is added to manganese solution. Manganese quantitatively displaces manganese from manganese EDTA chelate. Okay, So what they have done, they have just done the replacement reaction, and with the help of this replacement reaction they have identified the metal ion. Next we have indirect titration. This is also known as alkalimetric titration. It is used for the determination of ions such as anions which do not react with EDTA chelate. Protons from disodium EDTA are displaced by a heavy metal and titrated with sodium alkali. See, in indirect titration, what they are doing, or first of all, indirect titration is also known as alkalimetric titration. Okay, it is used for determination of ions such as anions. Okay, which do not react with EDTA chelate. Okay, protons from disodium EDTA are displaced by a heavy metal and titrated with sodium alkali. Example is given: barbiturates do not react with EDTA but are quantitatively precipitated from alkaline solution by mercuric ion in 1:1 complex. So barbiturate with EDTA, there is no reaction, but when we are complexing these barbiturates with metal ion and EDTA is used, then okay, so we can use this as a titration. Okay, so indirect titration is what? Matlab we have something which do not forms any complex with EDTA, but we know that metal ions form complex with EDTA. So what we'll do, we will attach these metal ions to whatever the compound we have which do not react with EDTA, and then we'll do the titration. So this is the indirect titration. Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we are going to see indicators. To carry out metal cation titrations using EDTA, it is almost always necessary to use a complexometric indicator to determine when the endpoint has been reached. Common indicators are organic dyes such as fast sulfone black, eochrome black tea. Color change shows that the indicator has been displaced, usually by EDTA, from the metal cations in solution when the endpoint has been reached. Thus, the free indicator rather than the metal complex serve as the endpoint indicator. Okay, so what is the basic mechanism behind the use of indicators in complexometric titration? I will tell you. For example, I have a metal copper, okay, copper solution, and in that I have put indicator. Okay, indicator is okay, I will represent it by I. So indicator and copper ion will form a complex CuI. Okay, and this complex will have a specific color. For example, it will have a red color. Now what we are going to do, we are going to titrate this with EDTA, this complex. So EDTA, what will do, EDTA will replace this I indicator, and itself it will form a complex with copper. So what I will have free uh, indicator I. Okay, and the indicator which is freely available, not complex with anything, will have a color something blue. Okay, so once I get the color blue, I will get to know that whole copper has been titrated with EDTA, and this is the endpoint of the reaction. So this is the basic mechanism here involved for the use of indicators. Indicators used in complexometric titrations. So here is the table given which indicators are used in the complexometric titration. So name of the indicator, first one is modern black 2, color change from red to blue, and it is used in the pH range 6 to 7, and metals detected are mentioned here. Eochrome black tea, solochrome black tea are also for the same. Next is murexide or ammonium purate, color change violet to blue, pH range is 12. Third we have catechol violet, so violet to red is the color. Okay, methyl blue, blue to yellow, thymol blue, blue to gray, alizarin red to yellow, it is one of the important indicator. Okay, alizarin. Next is sodium alizarin sulfonate, blue to red, metals detected and pH range is also given. And next is xylenol range, so lemon to yellow color, and different pH ranges for different metal ions are mentioned. Okay, instrumental methods of endpoint detection in complexometric titration. So we can use indicators, or we can use few instrumental methods in which we can determine the endpoint in this complexometric titration. Okay, or even not in complexometric, we can use these instrumental methods in most of the titrations, but here we will be discussing specifically for complexometric. So first we have spectrophotometric detection, the change in absorption spectrum when a metal ion of a complexing agent is converted to metal complex, or when one complex is converted to another, can usually detected using more accurately and more dilute solution with spectrophotometric or by visual methods. Okay, so spectrophotometric methods we can use. Next is amperometric titration. The effect of complex formation of the half pure potential of ion is to render it more negative. So there can be some potential changes, and these potential changes in the complex formation and uh, uh, between EDD and metal that we can detect with amperometric titration. Next is potentiometric titration. Since disodium EDTA reacts preferentially with the higher valency state of an ion, so there are electronic changes that we can detect with potentiometric titration. Next is high frequency titrator. This method is particularly suitable for dilute solution in some cases with concentrations as low as 0.0002 molar. Okay, so high frequency titrators can be used for the lowest concentration solutions. The ions can be titrated directly in buffered solution, or excess reagent can be added to the unbuffered solution and the liberated proton treated with standard alkali. Since buffer solution and other extraneous electrolytes reduce the sensitivity of titration, their concentration must be kept a minimum. So here we end with the complexometric titration. Okay. Now we are heading towards precipitation titrations. In precipitation titration, we will study what is precipitation and what is a precipitation reaction. Precipitation is a formation of a solid in a solution, and solid form is called the precipitate. A precipitation reaction occurs when water solutions of two different ionic compounds are mixed and an insoluble solid separates out of solution. Okay, so precipitation or precipitate formation is a solid formation in a solution which settle down. Okay, it is we call it as a precipitate. A precipitation reaction occur when water solutions of two different ionic compounds are mixed and an insoluble solid separates out of the solution. So we have a two aqueous solutions, okay, like of KCl and HgNO3, and when we mix two, a solid separates out of AgCl and KNO3 is left behind. Okay, so precipitation reaction is what we are getting an insoluble solid which separates out of the solution. Next is the precipitation is itself ionic. The cation comes from one solution and anion from the another. Okay, anion comes from one solution, cation from one solution, and thus the precipitation or the precipitate itself is a ionic thing. The precipitation of ionic products forces the reaction to completion. The requirement of a reaction to be useful in trigonometric analysis are: the precipitate should be practically insoluble, it should be insoluble precipitate form, the precipitate reaction should be rapid and quantitative, the titration result should not be hampered by adsorption or co-precipitation effects, and it must be possible to detect the equivalence point during the titration. So these are the basic requirements if we are proceeding for a precipitation titration. So one example is given here, a classical example of precipitation reaction, NaCl and AgNO3. So AgCl is getting precipitated and NaNO3 is left behind. Okay, so AgNO3 and NaCl we have added, NaCl aqueous solution we have in which we are adding AgNO3, and AgCl precipitate is formed here. Okay, so this is how precipitation reaction works, and with the help of this reaction mechanism we do the titration. Next is solubility products. The solvent should compare with crystal forces and overcome them, which often means that the solvent environment must be similar to the provided by the crystal structures. This is the basis for the simple rule: like dissolve strike means solute attraction is overcome by solute solvent attraction. Okay, I will tell you what here they need to convey. Like dissolve like or like attracts like is the basic principle behind formation of your precipitate. So when you have one solution in which there is solute present and another solution, okay, where you have a solute and a solution, then when you mix this solute solution in this, so both the solute will attract to each other, okay. So like dissolve likes or like attracts like. So both the solutes will attract each other and they will form a precipitate. During precipitation reaction, however, the opposite condition is aspired from, where the intermolecular forces between the molecules of product are high and solute-solute forces replace the solute-solvent forces. So what they do, solute-solute attract each other and solute-solvent repels each other and we get the precipitate. Now here is an example. Consider an aqueous solution of a slightly soluble salt Ba in equilibrium with excess of solid at constant temperature. So we have a barium, oh sorry, barium I'm telling. We have a salt Ba. We have its solution, okay, slightly soluble salt Ba, and it is like present as B plus and A minus, which the Ba separates into the solid phase. In dilute aqueous solution, essentially no undissociated Ba will be present in the solution. Since activity of solid is constant, the equilibrium constant would be written as, so this is the equilibrium constant Ksp B plus and A minus. So this is the solubility product which is constant. Okay. Solubility product is of important as it permits the calculation of one of the ion concentration if the other is known. So out of two, if we know one, we can identify the another. A substance precipitate out when the product of the ionic concentration exceeds the constant value. In the equation 1, solid Ba will precipitate out when the product of A plus exceeds. Okay. For example, see, I will explain you it in simple terms so that would be easy for you. We have a soluble salt, slightly soluble salt, which we have added into some solvent and we have prepared its solution. So it is present in an equilibrium always, okay, and this equilibrium we are representing it with a constant. For in case if we are increasing value of one of the salt in that solution, the another will precipitate out, or if we are increasing this, then another will precipitate out. Why this will happen? Because these are present in equilibrium state, okay. So a slight change will also result into the precipitation of that solution, okay. This is conveyed here. Now effect of solubility, effect on solubility of precipitate, this is not that much important, okay, but this is important, okay. Effect on solubility of precipitate. So precipitate solubility we are going to study here. Effects of acid, like if it is in acidic medium, the solubility of the salt will be increased by increasing the pH or increasing the acidity if the anion of the salt is the conjugate of weak acid. Effect of temperature, if the acidity of the solution is increased, then what it will happen, the solubility of the salt will increase, that the precipitate may get soluble, okay. Effect of temperature, the solubility of the precipitate encountered in qualitative analysis increases with rise in temperature. So the precipitate may get solubilized if we increase the temperature. With some substances the influence of temperature is small, but with either it is quite appreciable or appreciable. That is, most of the substances they get solubilized when we increase the temperature, but with few substances it has no effect. Effect of solvent, the solubility of most inorganic compounds is reduced by addition of organic solvents such as methyl, ethylene and propyl alcohol. The addition of about 20% by volume of ethanol shows the solubility of lead sulfate particularly negligible, thus permitting quantitative separation. Okay, so different solvents will influence the solubility. Next is argentometric titration. So argentometric titration comes under your precipitation titrations only. Okay. It is why it is named as argentometric titration, because titration methods these are based upon utilization of AgNO3 silver nitrate as a precipitating agent. So you have, if you have AgNO3 as a precipitating agent, silver nitrate, then you call that titration as argentometric titration. Silver ion, okay, silver ion is extremely useful in precipitation reactions including halides and pseudo halides. So halides, calcium, bromine, and iodine, bromine, iodine, and pseudo halides are mentioned here. Cyanide, thiocyanate, okay, hydrogen sulfide. Requirements: the precipitate formation is stoichiometric. Equilibrium should be attained rapidly. The precipitate must be of low solubility in the solution, and method to detect the stoichiometric point of the titration must be available. So the endpoint can be easily detectable. It should give a specific endpoint that should be low soluble into the solution after the formation of precipitate. Okay, so these are the basic requirements for your argentometric titration. Where silver nitrate is used, you call this those precipitation titrations as argentometric titrations. This is the graph for your argentometric titration. NaCl titrant solution in ml and Ag or Cl, we are going to here detect. Plots of titration curve are normally sigmoidal curves consisting of Ag or Cl versus volume of AgNO3 solution added. Okay, the curve titration curve is normally broken down in three regions for calculation and functioning of Ag determination: pre-equivalence region, equivalence point, and post-equivalence region. So in three different regions it is separated. Like for example, this is the pre-equivalence, this is the equivalence, and this is the post-equivalence region. Okay, we are not going into details because this is not that much important for your GPAT. Next, we are going to see titrations involving ammonia and potassium thiocyanate. So, if your titration have ammonia and potassium thiocyanate, you call it as thiocyanatometry. Okay, thiocyanatometry is the titration involving ammonia and potassium thiocyanate. In this type of titration, SCN is the titrant. Okay, SCN is the titrant ammonia or potassium thiocyanate. So here you have ammonia or potassium thiocyanate in your burette. Both are secondary standards. Okay, so both require standardization by primary standard, that is AgNO3. So first we need to standardize ammonia or potassium thiocyanate, and then we can use it for the titration because these are secondary standards. So we need to standardize them with the help of primary standard AgNO3. So what we are doing, we are standardizing them. Okay, these are the reactions for standardization. Indicator iron 3 salt is used as an indicator in this type of titration. So iron and SCN will form a iron SCN complex, and this complex would be broken up later. Example: iron salt or ammonium salt is formed here with ammonia. Okay, iron. Medium of titration in the presence of nitric acid, analyte titrate which contains silver. Example: colloid silver and silver nitrate. Advantage is it very acidic solution is required. Okay, so what is here conveyed in simple language if I am telling you? So thiocyanometry is where ammonia or SCN is used as a titrant. These are first standardized with AgNO3 and then we can use as a titrant. Okay, and then the titration can be proceeded. Nothing else is there. Next is mercurometry. So mercurometry is the precipitation where mercury is the titrant. Okay. So what is important here? Mercurometry, where mercury is the titrant. These are the reactions given. These are not important. Indicator is solution of iron thiocyanate. Okay, 1 to 2% spirit diphenyl carbazone. Okay, this is important here. And advantages of this is the titration is very acidic medium. Titration is cheap, doesn't cost more. And disadvantages: mercury salts are very toxic. Okay. Nothing else is important, only these points are important here. Next, we are going to see Gay-Lussac's method and Morse method, Voulard's method. Just a minute. Gay-Lussac's method, Morse method, and Voulard's method. These are different methods involved in your precipitation reactions. Okay, so Gay-Lussac's method. The fact that occurrence of turbidity accompanies precipitation reaction is made use of in this reaction or in this method. After the equivalence, the precipitation reaction ceases and extra drop will not result in turbidity. The procedure may be exemplified by the titration of AgNO3 with sodium chloride in the presence of free nitric acid and small quantity of pure barium nitrate to assist the progress of coagulation. So what is the Gay-Lussac method telling? It is telling that when we add excess of titrant, there won't be any precipitate formation and hence we can find out the endpoint of that titration. Next is Moore's method. The falls under the category of determining endpoint by formation of colored precipitate and is used for determination of chlorides and bromides in a neutral solution. So Moore's method is used for determination of chloride and bromide. A colored precipitate is formed in neutral solution. These methods are for endpoint detection. Gay-Lussac method, what it tells, as we are adding drop by drop the solution, precipitate होने से पहले क्या होता है, टर्बिडिटी होता है वहां पे. सो अगर टर्बिडिटी नहीं हो रहा है और आप प्रेसिपिटेट कंप्लीट फॉर्म हो गया है, उसके बाद अगर क्लियर सॉल्यूशन रह रहा है, तो उससे आप डिटरमाइन कर सकते हो कि ये एंड पॉइंट है इस रिएक्शन का, इस टाइट्रेशन का. मोर्स मेथड में क्या होता है, तो कलर्ड कॉम्प्लेक्सेस फॉर्म होते हैं, कलर्ड प्रेसिपिटेट फॉर्म होता है एंड क्लोराइड्स एंड ब्रोमाइड्स के लिए ये मेथड यूज की जाती है न्यूट्रल सॉल्यूशंस में. थर्ड we have Vollard method. In this method, formation of a solute color compound at the end point. Silver ion is titrated with thiocyanate in an acid solution using ferric ion as an indicator. So this is the example, or this is the Vollard method. Okay, silver ion is titrated with thiocyanate in an acid solution using ferric ion as an indicator as an endpoint. So colored compound is the endpoint detection method in your Vollard's method. Next is Fajan's method. Okay, K. Fajan, through his studies on nature of adsorption introduced a useful type of indicator for precipitation titration. Such indicators are absorbed on the surface of the precipitate at the equivalence point, and the absorption is accompanied by a color change. Fajan, the scientist, has invented indicator which get absorbed on the surface of the precipitate form, and after absorption it changes the color. Okay, so with this we can easily detect the endpoint. These indicators are either acid dyes, example fluorocene, eosine, basic dyes, okay, rhodamine series. Titrant in these titration is AgNO3, secondary standard solution, so standardized on primary standard solution of NaCl by a measured volume. Medium pH 6.5 to 10.3 for chlorides, for bromides and iodides 2 to 10.3. Indicator dichlorophurescine for chlorides, eosine for bromides and iodides. So if you have these all conditions, this is what you are proceeding with the Fajan's method.